Okay, this is our section for our writer's workshop and the lesson that we went over this week with the kids, kind of reviewing from last week. This next writing piece is called I Can't Imagine Life Without. And so the kids made a bucket list, the kids made a list of all the things they couldn't live without, and then they chose their favorite topic. So this is what they're expanding the details of their story on. So couple things we reviewed today that I taught last week are adding sensory details to our writing. So this is the piece where I will be grading for sensory details and sentence fluency. So some questions they can ask themselves as they write: what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? So as they tell their story, really thinking about those senses so that the reader, whoever's reading the piece, can feel like they are right next to the action. They are in the story. They want to keep reading more. It brings the story to life a little bit more. Your goal is to get your reader to feel and to visualize and to hear and to smell and to taste as much as possible without really overdoing it. So there's a time and place to use sensory details. You don't want to necessarily have it for every single sentence. So a couple examples: I could hear the rain on my rooftop. The flower field smelled like fresh perfume. I could feel my hair blow in the wind. The sand felt like sandpaper on the bottom of my feet. The water gracefully scattered mist across my face and tasted like the salty sea air. These are just some examples that kind of get the kids thinking about sensory details in their writing. And so with that, adding sensory detail to writing will improve the sentence lengths. So we want to have a mix of different sentence lengths in our writing. So rather than having a piece with a ton of short sentences or a piece of writing with nothing but long sentences, there are times and places for both, and we were trying to get you guys, the kids, to utilize both strategies in your writing. And so this is just a little review. Some strategies that can be used. So here's a short sentence: Wilson had a bone. I don't really see anything in this. There's not a whole lot of detail, and it's very, very short. And like I tell the kids, it's okay to have short sentences, but again, there's a time and place. So one strategy that can be used is adding descriptive words to a short sentence. Show your reader what you mean. So I can't really see anything here, but if I were to look on this sentence, Wilson gnawed at the bone in the corner of the yard under the gigantic tree. So what changed as a result? What changed? So one thing that definitely changed was the where. So I am adding more description about where it took place. And then how Wilson chewed the bone. And so the where focuses on in the corner of the yard, under a gigantic tree, and then he gnawed at the bone. So instead of having a bone, he gnawed at it under a big tree. Taking note of the words that I'm choosing to use. So rather than big, I'm going to use the word gigantic. So adding to that quality. And here's another example the kids practiced with. It is... So taking a short, choppy sentence and combining your sentences together and adding detail. So he barked at the squirrel. He ran after the squirrel. So I choose to add adverbs to my writing to show the reader. Again, it's about showing, not telling, how Wilson was doing these things. So how did he bark at the squirrel? Loudly and wildly, Wilson barked at the squirrel, then frantically chased after it down the road. So I was able to combine my sentences into one instead of having two short, choppy sentences off to the side here. So what changed? So a couple of things changed. Again, we're saying how Wilson barked. So how Wilson barked, the way that he barked. And we talked about using adverbs. So loudly and wildly he barked. Okay. How he chased. So not just he chased after or ran after the squirrel, he frantically chased after it. So again, we're using adverbs, the word frantically. All right. And then it's also answering the where. Where, so down the road. All right. Okay, so adding some detail into single sentences can not only help you combine two similar sentences, but it also helps create more fluidity and flow to your piece while giving those details and allowing the reader to visualize. And then afterwards, the kids practiced on their own and shared out some of their ideas. So it gives them a chance to kind of play around with this sentence. I walked Wilson to the park. He saw a squirrel. He chased the squirrel. Then we played catch with his ball. Let me just say ball. So how can you change it? Play around. Expand the description of the dog or the environment. Show your reader how Wilson walked or chased the squirrel. So some of the kids came up with things such as while walking to the park, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Whoops, too small. While walking to the park, Wilson spotted a squirrel pop out from under the bush or the leafy bush. Suddenly, the squirrel darted down the sidewalk, and Wilson frantically pulled after him. Okay. So this was just a revision that could have been done. Sorry. So while walking to the park, Wilson spotted the squirrel pop out from under the leafy bush. Suddenly, Suddenly, the squirrel darted down the sidewalk, and Wilson frantically pulled after him. So we had a good discussion about all of changing it, adding your sensory details and descriptions into your sentences to create longer, more elaborate sentences, but then coming into a realization that it's not always needing to be long. You can have short sentences in there somewhere. And so we tried it together, and this is the example we talked about. This was my piece that I've been working on with the kids in front of the kids. I wake from my slumber and see droplets of dew trickle down the edges of the tent fabric. The sweet sounds of birds begin to decorate the air with early morning melodies. I rub my eyes. Slowly but surely, I make my way out of the tent, waking up from my dreams of faraway places. So this section here, we kind of had a discussion what this did to my piece. A short sentence is good every now and then because you don't want to have these sentences that are so long. It's going to be drawn out. It's going to be difficult to follow. So allowing yourself to put in short ones every now and then to kind of quicken the pace of the story a little bit more. But the kids, we talked about glows and grows. So one grow that I could do in mine would be to kind of change up the length a little bit more. So I have a lot of the same length of sentences throughout my piece. So maybe continuing to do things like this right here, the short sentences, revising for that. And again, the kids noticed, the sensory details, feeling the cold soil of the earth, hearing the sweet sounds of birds beginning to decorate the air with melodies, seeing droplets of dew, I smell the crisp pine woods. So again, this is an example, and this is what should be achieved in the piece that the kids are working on for this week. This assignment is due on Friday onto Google Classroom. As far as the second draft is concerned. So the final will probably be due next week because I want to give the kids more time for working on their benchmark, which it's a state district test that they have to take. So that being said, they will have more time to revise this, but the typing of this must be done by this coming Friday, and they have the first half of the week to get through it. Okay, thanks.